Good afternoon, Midwinter Meeting exhibitors. This is Lisa Girardi with the Chicago Dental Society. Thank you for taking time out of your busy afternoon to participate in this webinar. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, so I'm glad you all signed up. I am pleased to introduce to you America's leading expert on exhibiting productivity and performance. He's our trade show expert of choice who's created our exhibitor ROI and leads the 3E Exhibiting Effectiveness Evaluation Program, which we offer at the Midwinter Meeting. So please help me welcome Mr. Jefferson Davis.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. And again, thanks to everybody for logging in. Secrets of world-class booth staffers. We're going to take you on a fast and furious journey on the perspectives on how booth staffers who perform really well see trade shows and the practices they use to improve the quality of the interaction so they make a better impression on dental professionals, they get better leads, and whether they're writing orders at the show or closing orders after the show, that you end up closing more business as a result of your exhibit at the Midwinter Meeting. So Lisa is one of the great show organizers in the industry that cares so much about us as exhibitors that she went to battle with the executive committee to get funding to launch and continue to do the Exhibitor ROI Center. If you're here today, you're probably aware of that. That's your 24/7, 365 on-demand knowledge portal. We've got a bunch of webinar replays up there. We've got downloadable articles, standout exhibit reports, and tools, downloadable implementation tools. So be sure to bookmark it, be sure to share it with everybody on your team, and be sure to check there frequently because we're continually updating the program. We'll talk a little bit about the exhibiting effectiveness evaluation too, where we come to the show and using a 21-point matrix, we evaluate your exhibit in action. And the goal is not to be a critic or a judge, but the goal is to be a light, a spotlight really, to say, hey, here's what's working, keep doing it, here's your blind spots and how to fix them, with the end game of you having a highly productive and a highly profitable exhibiting experience. So let's jump into our topic today. I want you to kind of get your mental pump primed here by answering a few quick questions. And you can jot these down in your workbook. Number one, when you think about the success of your exhibit program, how important do you feel booth staff is in that success? Second, do you have structure, do you have process in terms of how you select who's going to work the booth, in how you communicate with them before and at and after the show? Do you have a formal preparation process in terms of what you have them do to prepare? And what do you do at the show? How do you manage the activity to make sure the staff are where they need to be, when they need to be there, and that they're doing what they're doing and they're generating results? And then finally, have you ever provided your booth staff with exhibiting skills training? So go ahead and jot your answer down to most of those. So the booth staff, to me, I think of trade shows being about face and next. So it's putting our company identity, our products, our staff face to face with dental industry professionals, getting a meeting of the minds, and getting a commitment to the next step. So when I say trade shows are about face and next, that's what I mean. And so only your booth staff can manage this part. So it really doesn't matter how big and pretty your booth is, or how great your products are, or where you're located on the show floor. It's your booth staff that is going to manage this critical success factor. And attendees decide literally based over half of their decision to stop and enter or just pass right on by, depending on what the people in the booth are doing or not doing. And in every purchase process, there's 5 major buying decisions. And the first buying decision is your people. So the 5 decisions are people, company, product, money issues, and time to buy. The first one is your people. And the challenge at trade shows is the gravitational pull when a dentist walks into your booth. Start talking about your products, and often missing the little things that you can do to make sure that you're getting the people decision made, which is the first buying decision. And finally, your booth staff, people make judgments about your company and your products based on their interactions with your staff. That's why we're talking here today about this booth staffing, okay? And when we talk to dental professionals, trying to really figure out what it is that they really want, what they need, what they expect from us as exhibitors, they want staff to be accessible, meaning I can engage them, and available, that we've got enough and I can actually talk to somebody. Approachable, they want people who look and act like they want to be there versus sitting in the back of the booth with a sandwich in one hand and a cell phone in the other. And polite, courteous, considerate of their time, considerate of their knowledge. Professional, this is a business-to-business environment, so professionalism counts. It always counts. Helpful, they want staff who look and act like they're there to help them. A dentist walks into the booth and 3 of your booth staffers are standing there, talking to one another. And no one acknowledges him or her, and no one engages him or her. And they turn around and walk out. You can't have that happening. Knowledgeable, you've got to make sure your booth staff knows their stuff. They got to know your products. They got to know the competitive products. They got to understand the application, how the dentist or the hygienist or the assistant uses the product, right? So they got to be knowledgeable. Brevity. They want us to get to the point. They don't have the time or the bandwidth or the attention span, to take in a lot of information. So we have to really be able to communicate concisely, persuasively, and interactively. And they want to be heard. They want to know that you're not just talking at them, that they walk in the booth and say, hey, doctor, you seen this new device over here? Come check this out, right? That's not what they want. They want you to take a few moments to understand who they are and why they're at your booth and what it is they're hoping to accomplish. And they want to know that you understand that. And when they visit your booth, engage with your staff, and give you their badge or their card to scan, they want you to follow up. Big complaint. A post-show survey every year tells us. The trade show trend study tells us that we're not doing a good job on following up with people who visit our booth. And here's the thing on follow-up. We talked about this in our lead management webinar, which I strongly encourage you to view if you haven't. When you don't follow up, you not only hurt your company's return on investment, but you also can negatively impact the value that the dentist or the hygienist or the assistant or the office manager gets from their time in the exhibit hall. And that hurts everybody. So we got to follow up. So, what I would think is that you might want to take these needs and share them with your staff and make sure everybody really understands. In fact, because we're recording this webinar here, I would really suggest that before CDS that you play this webinar live, because you're going to be able to play it at your pre-show meeting. To get all your booth staff together, play this webinar, right? It's going to give them some great content. By the way, this is training content that if you were to contact my company or other companies that do this and have us come in and train your staff, you could be talking $5,000 to $10,000, right? Investment. Well, you're getting some pretty top-notch content for free, courtesy of Chicago Dental Society. So how do world-class booth staffers look at trade shows? I'll give you a right-off-the-shelf real example. I was at a national sales and dealer meeting on Tuesday in San Diego. I had 200 salespeople in the room, a mix of the company's salespeople and dealers. And I asked them, I said, how many of you like working trade shows? 6 hands went up. 6 hands went up. So out of 200 people, 194 don't like working trade shows. So we got to make sure that we deliver what I call a wake up and smell the concrete message to our sales teams and our booth staff. So here's how world-class booth staffers see trade shows. And by the way you see something is going to determine your behaviors. The way you view, the paradigm, the frame that you look at something through. So here's the first way that world-class booth staffers see trade shows: as an exciting business development and relationship management opportunity. Because that's what it is. You get to meet with your existing customers and deepen the relationship, and you get to meet potential new customers and start a business development opportunity. Second, they really get excited about the opportunity to get face-to-face contact with more customers, more prospects in a few days than they do months in the field. They also view it as a learning opportunity between their interactions with dental industry professionals, between educational sessions, between walking the exhibit floor and really taking in the entire industry under one roof. You can learn a lot of stuff at a trade show if you're coming in with that frame, if you're looking at it that way. And number 4, this one is badly overlooked, but world-class booth staffers see it: a skill development opportunity. Any area that you want to get better on, whether it's engaging a visitor, whether it's building rapport, whether it's guiding the conversation with the right questions, whether it's your listening skills, whether it's your ability to deliver your company story, whether it's your ability to present your products or your services better, whether it's your ability to take leads and get commitments, whatever you want to get better at, you have the opportunity, you'll have the chance. Like if I want to get better at my qualifying skills, and I'm in the booth for 8 hours, and I talk with 4 visitors over the average hour, that's 32 repetitions, opportunities a day. If I do that over 3 days, you're talking 100 opportunities for me to sharpen a skill. So this is how they view it. World-class booth staffers view it. So when we think about what really makes like a world-class booth staffer, like if I could create a robot or a cyborg and it had all of the elements and I could drop 10 of these in my booth, number 1, they would demonstrate a positive attitude. I love to exhibit and it shows, right? It's kind of like the old Delta. We love to fly and it shows. So they're really excited about being in the show, and it comes off of them. They're professional, they're courteous, they're energetic. They have the ability to stand on their feet and engage, for the entire show. They've got an outgoing personality. They're not afraid to walk up to a stranger and introduce themselves. They're an effective questioner. They know what questions to ask. They know how to ask the questions. They know what sequence to ask the questions in. They're a good listener, right? They listen not just with their ears, but they listen with their eyes. They listen not to respond, they listen to understand. So good listener, right? One of the most important needs of the human being, any human being, is to be heard. So listening skills. They don't fear rejection. They're not afraid of trying to, stand on the perimeter of the booth and greet and engage people. They're not afraid to ask people for the order if it's appropriate. So they really don't fear rejection. They know your product, your company, your market. They have that ability to communicate, to deliver your messaging, concise, persuasively, and interactively. Number 10, they have a commitment mentality. They understand that the real outcome of an in-booth interaction is a meeting of the minds and a commitment to the next step. So I would, give these 10 criteria to my booth staff, and I would ask them to score themselves on a 1 to 5, 5 very effective, 1 ineffective, and see how they line up on these 10 attributes. And if you find that as a team, they're weak in 3 or more of these attributes, you're probably going to have a staffing problem. And there's really only a few things you can do. You can train it. You can find it in other maybe departments in your company, or you can rent it. There's companies that you can rent professional booth staffers who will meet, greet, qualify, tell your story, and hand off qualified leads. So again, if they score low individually or as a group in these 10 factors, train it, find it somewhere else, or rent it. Okay. So we've been talking all along here is that, at the end of the day, trade shows are really about face and next. That's the magic power of trade shows. All the other benefits like branding and awareness and lead generation and new product introduction, we can get those benefits through other channels. It's the power of face that makes trade shows magical, which is why they'll never go away. Trade shows will never go away, not in our lifetime. And even with millennials, there's a lot of research. People are out there saying millennials, they don't really want to engage. They're just on computers. Actually, I've read at least 4 different studies that are beginning to point to that millennials are actually very interested in face-to-face. They want to evaluate the people behind the brands. Write that phrase down. That is a really sticky phrase. They want to evaluate the people behind the brands. The only way you're going to be able to evaluate the people is through face-to-face interaction. That's what trade shows are about. Okay, so let's get into some of the do's and don'ts here. Number 1, make sure your booth staff looks and acts like they want to be there. If you have a firm booth duty schedule, make it mandatory. If they can't man their schedule, they have to find a replacement. Keep the booth clean and orderly. If cups and stuff are laying around, if something's dropped on the carpet, treat it just like you would your home. Stand up in the booth. Don't sit down. Don't get behind counters. Put a smile on your face. I tell you, half the battle of staying toe-to-toe with buyers the entire show is just looking like you want to in a non-aggressive manner. So put a smile on your face. Proactively engage people near your booth and in your booth. Don't wait for them to come up to you. So be proactive. Ask more questions. Talk less, and really demonstrate good listening skills. Basic things. The don'ts you got to watch out for, passive, they're setting, gathered toward the back of the booth, over aggressive. They're out in the aisle, calling people by their name, pouncing on people. You got to avoid both of these behaviors, right? Badge gawking. They're standing, just look at a badge, look at a person. Look at a badge, look at a person. We'll talk about how to use badges in a moment. Hanging with the gang. So maybe your company wears branded apparel. You've got shirts or jackets or whatever. And I look into the booth and I see 5 of your booth staffers standing there with the blue shirts on, right? Here's a question. Now, assuming I don't know these 5 people, how easy do you feel it is to walk up to a gang of strangers? Does it get easier when you realize the gang is probably salespeople? Not very easy, right? So the rule in the booth is put a box around it, like a 3-foot invisible box around yourself, and just keep your body language open to visitors and those in the aisles, looking like you want to talk in a non-aggressive manner. Speaking of body, you got to watch your postures. The arms crossed, the feet close together, the hands in the pocket, right? These are all closed body postures. Okay? Prejudging someone by their appearance. eating, drinking, chewing gum in the booth, little things like that, you know, talking on cell phones, texting, working on computers in the booth. You see, here's the problem with these don'ts, okay? The CDS Midwinter Meeting is a big show. I would not assume that any individual attendee will pass my booth twice. I would only assume that they might pass once. And that's my only chance. And if they glance toward my booth and my team is standing there with their backs to the aisles talking to one another and on cell phones, they're going to blow right on by your booth. And you may never have the chance again. So make sure you share these basic rules of exhibitorship with your team, you know, because they can make a big difference. And sometimes in human relations, the little things are the big things. Here's an example. Check out this booth. One guy's sitting there in his booth, back to the aisle, talking on the phone. The other guy's sitting on there looking like he really doesn't want to be here. Check out this one. Talk about the gang. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blue shirts behind the counter, backs to the aisle, one of them leaning on the counter. Would you walk into either of these booths? Probably not, right? These are some things we want to avoid. Okay, let's get into interaction skills here, how to really kind of work a show, okay? The first 30 seconds are critical, okay? And there's 2 engaging scenarios. The visitor walks into your booth or they walk near your booth. So we have to think through, what do we do in these 2 scenarios? And the problem is that untrained booth staffers are usually ineffective in both of these scenarios. So let's work on some skill here on what do we do. When the visitor walks up to your booth, the question is not, can I help you? Did you have any questions? Did you come to the show to place an order? Those are all the wrong things to do, right? What we want to do is greet the person. Hi, how you doing? Good afternoon. My name's, and welcome them to your booth. Welcome to Competitive Edge, the name of your company. Meet the person. Don't read their name off their badge. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So introduce yourself. My name's Jefferson Davis, and you are. Now, when you're dealing with doctors, right, dentists, doctors, that's a great way. You know, everyone assumes you got to call them doctor. You know, oh yeah, they absolutely want to be called doctor. Why not introduce yourself and see how they respond? So if I meet the person and I go, hey, hey, how's it going? Thanks for stopping my booth, man. Welcome, Competitive Edge. I'm Jefferson Davis, and you are. He says, Dr. Smith. He's set the frame now. I need to address him as Dr. Smith. But if he says Michael, here we are. It's Jefferson and Michael. So don't read their name off the badge. Take the moment to meet the person by introducing yourself and then asking them. And number 4, the discovery question. So if they walk into your booth and you have a product display and they land on that product display, they're looking at it. Here's the discovery question. I noticed you were looking at our instruments. Tell me a little about your interest. It's an open-ended question. It will get the visitor to talk. Now, if they are in your booth and they haven't landed on anything, they're just kind of moving around through space and you engage them, here's the discovery question. What brings you by? What brings you to Competitive Edge today? Notice both of these are open-ended questions that will get the visitor talking. So you can begin to start demonstrating your listening skills, start building some rapport, start understanding who this person is and why they're here. Now, the other scenario, you're not talking to anybody. You don't have traffic in your booth. You need to get people to look at your booth and enter. We train a technique that we call SOS. Here it is. Stand up, open your body posture, smile on your face, SOS. Then look toward somebody or look into the aisles. Every time you do this, 9 out of 10 times, somebody in the aisle is going to notice you. Why? Hardly anybody else is doing it. Walk around the show floor and you'll see what I mean. It's crazy, right? So I stand up, smile, put an open body posture. I look towards someone. I acknowledge or greet them. Sometimes acknowledging is just a nod of the head. Sometimes it's a greeting. Hi, how's it going? How are you? How are you enjoying the show? You know? And then I watch for signs of interest. If they're walking down the aisle and they're moving at a fast pace, do they slow down? Do they start to slow down? Do they stop? Do they lock visually on something in my booth? Then I could ask a question or even invite them into the booth. Hey, what's been the coolest thing you've seen at the show so far? Hey, what sort of solutions were you looking for your practice at this show? Or what brought you to the show, right? Stuff like that. So think about a good open-ended question that could get them talking. Sometimes just inviting people into your booth by stepping back, not stepping forward. These are all things you can do. So you've got two very specific skills here. When they walk into your booth, greet, welcome, meet, and discover. When they're on the perimeter of your booth, stand up in an open body posture, put a smile, look toward them, acknowledge or greet them, and watch for signs of interest, and then engage with a question. And you can practice those skills, and you should practice. Get your team together and have them practice this so everybody gets comfortable and they know exactly how to engage visitors. Okay? Now, the reason we ask the open-ended question, what brings you by? I noticed you were looking at our software. Tell me about your interest. Is we're trying to figure out what type of visitor this is. There are three types of people that will walk into your booth. Casual visitors. I have other names for them. Looky-loos, tire kickers, time wasters, trick-or-treaters, hungry people, thirsty people, lonely people looking for someone to talk to. Okay? But here's the bottom line. The casual visitor is not at your booth because of interest in learning about your products. It's for some other reason. And if you've got a candy bowl, or a popcorn machine, or you're giving out beverages or coffee or smoothies, or if you've got a contest, drop your card here to win a GoPro, you're going to attract your share of casual visitors. So what do you do with a casual visitor? Well, two things. Question for interest and ask if they came to the show with a group. And if there's no interest and they're not, no real product interest and they're not with a group, disengage. Get out of this conversation. I'll show you how in a minute. Second type of visitor, very easy to spot. They walk into your booth and they start asking questions. You got to be careful with this type of visitor. What you don't want to do is spend 20 minutes and then find out you just educated your competition. So the way I deal with information seekers is I question the question. So a visitor walks into my booth and they say, hey, tell me about your training services. I might use humor and say, do you have all day? And then I'll go back and I'll welcome them, I'll meet them, and I'll ask a discovery question. The other way I might handle them is to question the question. So the person says, tell me about your training services. Say, there's a lot I can tell you about it, but so I can share the right information. Let me ask you, what's prompting your interest in training? Now I can figure out, where to go. With information seekers, my goal is to identify their information needs, give them a little bit of information here in the booth, and direct them where to learn more. Buyers, solution seekers, that's the third type of visitor, and I think that's who you're looking for. When you ask the question, hey, what brings you by? I noticed you were looking at our software. Tell me about your interest. They will self-identify. So here's your challenge. Within 60 to 90 seconds into the interaction, your booth staff should be able to quickly do a mental check down of what type of visitor they're with. Now, they got to know how to get out of interactions, okay? Because time is the enemy at a show, The average interaction in a booth is 3 to 7 minutes. And every minute you're talking to the wrong person, that's a minute you're not available to talk to the right person. So let's talk about how to get out of interactions. The fastest and easiest thing to do is thank them. Hey, you know what? I have really enjoyed talking with you. I appreciate you coming by. Give them a business card. That is a sign of disengagement. Hey, I want to give you a card in case you ever had a need or an interest or know anybody who did. Right? This is where if you have giveaways in the booth, tchotchkes, right? You could use the giveaway as a way to break, hey, you know what? I appreciate you stopping by. Here's my card, and let me give you, I got something for you. Here's a pen, right? Hand them the pen. I'd like to find some exhibit near me that has something going on in it, and then I'll direct or guide them to the other booth. I'll go, hey, have you seen that? Man, you got to go check that out. It's an amazing booth. It's right over there. They're going on and on and on. I can't get them to stop talking. I need to break the thought process they're on, so I will ask them for a favor right in the middle of the conversation. I'll go, hey, I wonder if you could do me a favor. Whatever they were saying, I promise you, you've broken their thought pattern. I've got an appointment coming in 2 or 3 minutes that I need to get ready for. I've really enjoyed talking with you. And feel free to look around and turn and move away. And finally, you could create a nonverbal tag in the booth. Maybe your arms are crossed with your right hand under your chin. This would be your tag to another member on your team that you've tried all these other ways and they're not going away. You need some help here, right? And the other staffer comes up and goes to the visitor very gently, very politely, says, excuse me, sir, I am so sorry for interrupting. Jefferson, you've got an appointment. I think John's going to be here in like 2 minutes. So sorry for interrupting, right? And that's how you do it. You rarely will you have to go to number 6. And by the way, these techniques ascend in their usage. Okay. This would be a good time, if any questions have flashed in your mind, to just take a moment, catch our breath here, that hasn't been answered, and go to your question queue and type it in. What I'm going to do, because we've only got about 7, 8 minutes of content time left, is I'm going to go through the rest of the presentation, and I'm going to come on the back end and pick up Q&A. Okay. It's not what you tell, it's what you ask. Key point. Okay? He or she who asks the questions guides the conversation. And you do not want visitors to feel like you are interrogating them, but this is a two-way communication. So there are 3 things that I think we should know before we talk in any detail about our company, our products, or our services. Who are we with? Why are they visiting? And what do I need to do? The only way you're going to get this understanding is by asking questions. So you've got to think through your question flow in advance. You have to order it into the natural flow of conversation. You've got to use more open-ended questions than closed-ended questions. You have to ask your questions in a non-aggressive or non-interrogative tone. You'll notice when I'm asking questions, it's like, tell me about this, and what are you doing in this area? And when you look at this type of product, what are your most important considerations? And where are you in the budgeting phase for this? And see how my tone gets softer and gentler? Angle your body position when you're asking questions. If you're standing shoulder to shoulder, face to face, asking qualifying questions, you're in the wrong place. Just shift off to the side. Okay? And finally, pick 1 or 2 of your questions, the ones that you really want to get them to talk to, and put their name on the front or the back end of the question. So what I want you to think about here is your question flow. We organize questions in the front end, which are situational questions that give me understanding of the visitor so I can decide if and what to present. So I might ask questions about, hey, how'd you learn about our exhibit? And what brings you by? tell me a little bit about your practice. You know, is it a general? Are you a specialist? What do you do within the practice? And with regard to what I do, what are some of the problems or concerns or things you'd like to improve or projects that you might have? So what I want you to do is pick which of these areas make sense for you, and I want you to write open-ended questions. These are the natural questions that you should ask before presenting. Now you've got the information to present, but you still need to think through your back end, which are your harder qualifying type questions. Like, how are you involved in the evaluation of this type of product for your practice? Who besides yourself would be involved in looking at this? Typically, if you were going to bring in this type of software or change a vendor, what's the evaluation process you would typically go through? Where are you in the budgeting phase, or do you have funds allocated? What's our next action? What do you think we should do next? And what's our time frame for that next action? So you organize your front end, back end questions. You script them. And then you have your booth staff practice, so they're very comfortable guiding the conversation with the best questions. Let's talk about presenting. Okay, now you have met the person, you've made positive contact, you've gained understanding through your questions flow. Now you're going to talk. You're going to present, talk about your company or your products or your services. Write this down. The real purpose is to present just enough information to make them want to know more or want it and be willing to commit to a next step. That's it. It's not to tell the whole story. You don't have the time. They don't have the bandwidth. They don't need to know everything, but they do need to know something. Here's the outcome. I want that visitor to go, this is awesome. I have got to learn more about this. It's exactly what I'm trying to do in the booth. Okay? Or, you know, if you have a commodity, easier sales cycle type product and you're trying to sell it, then I want them to go, this is awesome. Where do I get it? How do I order this? Right? That's it. That's the purpose. So here's some fast track ways to help you get there. Number one, ask about familiarity. Do not talk about your product or service until you get them to tell you what they already know. So your question might be, hey, there's a lot I could tell you about my intraoral cameras. But let me ask you, what do you know at this point about intraoral cameras? Or what do you know about our cameras? Right? Then I can get the visitor to tell me exactly what they want to learn. If I'll ask a question like, you know, when you consider or evaluate instruments, what are the 2 or 3 most important things that you want to know or tend to look at? What a great question. They'll tell you exactly what to focus on in your presentation. You just got to ask the question, right? Number 3, 60-second messages. You've got to be able to hit the information hot buttons concisely, persuasively, interactively. The way this works is if you did a good job of asking your need-based questions up front, and then you figured out what fact or feature about my product speaks to that need, what is the advantage, benefit, or payoff of that feature, and you add a feedback question, you'll be able to deliver maximum selling power in minimum time. Okay, so here's what it looks like in action. So let's say that I engaged you and we found out that your company was not getting ROI from trade shows, and you felt like you were spending a lot of money but not really getting much. You know, and the service that I thought was going to make a difference for you was an exhibit staff training program. And so now I have to think about what would be a fact or a feature about my training. I would go, well, your booth staffers will create a personalized visitor interaction process. And what this means, and there's your phrase, write that down, what this means or which means, they'll be better able to manage the interaction to improve the quality of the leads they capture. And I close it, bring it all together. You know, how important do you feel lead quality is to achieving exhibiting ROI? That's what your 60-second message looks like. So I would take my feature products in the booth, identify the needs write need-based questions, script out at least 3 60-second messages that speak to the needs. Ask the need. They voice the need. You know exactly what to talk about, how to talk about it in a concise, persuasive, interactive manner. Let's talk about our final piece here. The end of the interaction is the visitor committing to take some next action. So that's what we mean by close in the booth. For some of you, close is an order. Why don't you give it a try? We've got a great show special. Why don't you take advantage of it? You know, and for many of you, if you're not selling at the show, writing orders, then it's a lead, okay? So you close when you get positive feedback from the visitor, which is why we ask the feedback question, right? You know, on the 60-second message. And then based on who we're with, where we are in the relationship, and where we are in the sales cycle, now we can figure out what commitment do we ask for. So what I want you to identify when you talk to a visitor in your booth, what are your typical next action steps? Maybe it's give literature. Maybe it's send literature. Maybe it's give a sample. Maybe it's go talk to a dentist who's using our products. Maybe it's go to an educational session at the show and then come back. Maybe it's visit another exhibitor in the show. Maybe it's visit their practice. Maybe it's a lunch and learn in their practice. Maybe it's a proposal. Maybe it's a sales order. I don't know what they are for you, but I want you to think them through. And here's the question you use to get the visitor to commit to the next step. Hey, based on what we've talked about so far, does this sound like it might work for your practice or might be a better way of doing what you're already doing, right? And I'm watching for the positive response. Now, if they're fully engaged and the response is positive, I'm going to call the next step. I'm going to say, why don't we go ahead and set up a visit to your practice over the next month or so, you know, to take a look at your current process. Fully engaged, I'm going to call the next step. But if there's any hesitancy on their part, or they haven't been really engaged and dialed in, collaborate with them. And I would ask, what do you think our next step should be? What do you think we should do next? Okay, final piece. Define what is and what isn't a lead. Someone walks up, drops a business card in a fishbowl. That is not a lead. Okay? You just scan somebody's badge with no engagement and not asking any questions. That is not a lead. What is a lead is personal interaction, questions asked, answers documented, next step identified and agreed to by the visitor. You give me 50 of what is a lead, I'll convert 15 to 25 of those to business. You give me 500 business cards in a fishbowl, I'll be lucky to convert 5. So we want to do this the smart way. Think about what information you need to capture to really qualify lead, and I gave you that through your question flow, and then integrate it into your capture device. If you're closing sales at the show, remember it's hard to ask for a commitment larger than the relationship you have built with the visitor. So if you've got a big ticket, odds are you're not going to be able to get the close commitment, but you could get a commitment to a in-practice demo. But, you know, if you have the type of product and the sales cycle, it's appropriate, ask for the order. The best way that I've found to ask for orders is, why don't you give it a try? Why don't you give it a try, right? You can grab the low-hanging fruit by using show specials, whether it's a product discount, financing terms, delayed billing, shipping, bundling and packaging things, you know, the Ginsu approach, and using risk reversal, which are money-back satisfaction guarantees. Also, having client lists, testimonials, and quotes will help you if you're there to close business at the show. Going to social events, you know, if you are, let's say you're hosting a hospitality suite, be a host, not a guest, keyword, right? When you're at social events, create your icebreaker so you can go up and approach people. Also develop an exit script. How do you, you know, so you don't get locked into conversations that you need to get out of. Always carry business cards, a pen, and a small notepad with you. When you go to social events, set a goal to interact with a set number of people over the hour. Be interested in them. Demonstrate interest in them, and then they will automatically become interested in you. When you walk into a social event, it's a reception, whatever, just look for people who are standing alone, right? Walk up and engage them, introduce yourself. If you know other people, ultimately introduce them to others. If you're going to take customers to a restaurant, be very careful and thoughtful about who sets where. Give your customers the view, okay? And be professional at all times and just watch your manners and your table manners. So let's close up. We're running a few minutes over. Your booth staff makes or breaks you. Attendees are going to make judgments about your company and your products based on your staff. Best people forward should be your staffing strategy. Don't hope that they know how to be effective in the crazy environment called a trade show. Train them for success. Okay, you can use a lot of the content that I've shared with you today to really put a world-class booth staff on the show. And be very careful about social events. Make sure that you're thinking them through, planning them, executing them better, and that when you are hosting the event, you're playing the host role, not the guest. Okay? So with that, I'm going to open the question queue. Remember, this webinar was recorded and will be uploaded. This and all the other great content that's up on the ROI Center, make sure you use it. I'm going to look into the queue, and while I do, I'm going to toss it back to Lisa for closing thoughts from Chicago Dental Society. Lisa?
Thank you, Jefferson. And thank you all for participating today. I wanted to give you some reminders. I did send all of the companies an email about making sure you take advantage of any of the discounted offers provided from our vendors that provide services to you for your booth at the show. The Exhibitor Services Kit is online. Freeman is our general contractor, and we're coming up close to when discounted prices are no longer available. So I encourage you to take a look at all of your needs and start placing those orders. I know many of you are probably preparing for your participation at the Yankee Dental meeting later on this month, but I just want you to take advantage of all of the discounts to at least minimize your expenses when you come to the show. Also, don't forget that we'll start mailing out exhibitor badges next week. So after that, all badges will only be for on-site pickup. So if you have your staff already figured out for the show, please take advantage and sign them up as soon as possible. And,
all right, thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, so, some questions here in the queue. I'm going to jump these. The first question I have is, how many staff is too much in a 10 by 10 space? Staffing rule of thumb, 50 square feet per staffer. If you're in a 10 by 10 booth, maximum is maybe 3, ideally 2. If you put 4 or 5 of your people in a 10 by 10 booth, you're going to have no room for the most important person, the visitor. You do not want to leave attendees standing out in the aisles. You want them in your space. Window shoppers don't buy. When they enter the store, they buy. So 2, maybe 3 staffers in a 10 by 10 booth. The next question is, how do you handle shoppers from just taking items off the table? Number 1, pull the table back from the aisle. If you have it setting right on the aisle, then you're encouraging hit and run behavior. So pull it back a few feet. Number 2, have less product that can be just grabbed and taken would be a way. Number 3, put a little sign on it that says booth sample. Please ask for a sample. So those are some things I think would help with people from hit and run. Number 4, just keep somebody near the table to observe what's going on. But I think the greatest idea is don't put a lot of stuff out that gives the appearance of you're just wanting people to grab and go, unless sampling is an important part of your sales process. In that case, you probably want to distribute as many samples as you can. So you got to think about what's the purpose for your, what's your product, and is it you're trying to build the brand awareness and you want people to sample it, then you you would want to give a lot of it away, right? But if you don't, then all those tips I just gave you would help. You got another question. Someone asked about do visitors usually have downloaded an app to read QR codes? It's hit or miss. QR codes got really popular for a window there, but it's hit or miss now. So if your idea is I'm going to distribute product information through a QR code, I don't have any hard data on the number or percentage of attendees that have it downloaded. And you may even want to ask at your next show. That would be a great research question for you to ask visitors. Maybe you're going to say, hey, I'm going to ask 100 booth visitors, do they have a QR code reader app downloaded on their phone? And then if you find out that 70 or 80 of them do, then yeah, have QR codes in your booth. If you find that only 15 or 20 do, you might still have a QR code, but you're also going to have the physical literature there for them to take too. Next question, someone asked, one of my attributes is doesn't fear rejection. You know, what it is and why is it on my list? You know, at a trade show, you've got to talk to people. You can't be shy and you can't be afraid of walking up to a stranger and saying, hey, hi, my name's Jefferson and you are. Or if you're there to write orders, when you get to the end of the presentation, you can't be afraid of asking, why don't you give it a try? You know, why don't you give it a try? So not fearing rejection is a part of the sales process or the engagement process. You know, if you're afraid to go up and meet strangers and you walk into a social event, you're going to stand around in the corner probably with a drink in one hand and food in the other, and you're not going to get much from the event. Okay, so you've got to, you know, you've got to make sure that you know how to approach people and you're not afraid to ask questions and ask for the commitment that you're looking for from the visitor. Okay, let me, this next question, do you recommend purchasing the show's lead scanner or sticking with writing it down on paper? My recommendation is that if a dentist or a hygienist or an assistant or a practice manager walks into your booth and is interested in your company and they hand you their badge to scan and you can't scan it, I think you're sending a really bad message right out of the gate. You know, it's been said that we don't get a second chance to make a first impression. There's a reason those badges have data in them, so you can quickly access it. Now, you can still have a paper lead form, but I do think that it is smart money to invest in the official lead retrieval system the show provides, because I want to make sure that I don't put any question in anybody's mind. You know, and all of a sudden, you know, if I'm a dentist and I walk in your booth and we have a great conversation, and I go, here, you know, I'd really like you to send me some information, and I hand you my badge to scan and you can't scan it, that's a hiccup. That's a road bump. Too early in the relationship to have that kind of hiccup or road bump. So I think that helps with your question. All right, let me see if there's anything else. I think that's all I'm seeing right now. I want to thank everybody for logging in. I want to thank you for being an exhibitor at CDS Midwinter Meeting. And I'll close this not by wishing you a better show. If you select your staff carefully, if you train them on how to be effective in this environment, and you manage the visitor interaction process, you will have a tremendously successful show, not just at the CDS Midwinter Meeting, but at every show you do going forward. Because if you remember nothing else from today, trade shows are about face and trade shows are about next. And only your people can manage that. So on behalf of everyone at Chicago Dental Society, my company here, Competitive Edge, thanks for logging in. Hard to believe we will be seeing you in Chicago very soon. So have a great rest of your day. Thanks.